What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and it feels so good to be back here on the airwaves with you guys. I'm your host, Joe Orrico, joined by Chris Welsh. Today, we are going to be breaking down some rookies that you should be targeting in your 2026 Fantasy Baseball drafts. We're getting going already. The World Series has not even concluded, but we had a show last week. Welsh and Joe were breaking down some dynasty movers. Today, we're talking rookies. Chris, it's great to be back on the mic with you, man. This is a great time of year for me. You see, I got the Blue Jays jersey on. One win away from the World Series, which could happen by the time you're hearing this. It could have happened. So I'm living a good life right now, my friend.
It likely is going to. Yeah, you guys can be heroes in Canada and the U.S. by taking down the Dodgers. Yeah, but it's good to do this, man. We are in the full throes of starting the process of the fantasy baseball talk for the 2026 season. From dynasty to rookies. We did an episode like this last year where these are going to be the rookies. At least we're going to start with the rookies that we think can impact 2026, whether that's players that are going to break camp or players that are going to be up pretty soon. And then we're going to have a list of names that are big time prospects that I don't think are going to be close to breaking camp, but we'll see if they can, come up by the All-Star break or so. So this is just going to be a fully dedicated episode to the rookies that you guys might want to invest in. And it's a pretty interesting year in 2025 from the disappointment guys who broke camp, like Dylan Cruz and, I guess you could say like Jason Dominguez, to the players that were absolute surprises, from Drake Baldwin to Cade Horton to the slew of guys at the end. Even Bubba Chandler, who we screamed about for 4 months, who was horrible in the minors, and then he came out and he balled out. Not a guy, the last caveat I want to throw out here, Joe, that we're going to talk about, because the one little caveat to this episode is these are non-debuted prospects that we're going to see. So this is not going to count guys that are going to be prospect eligible who had made the majors. So Bubba Chandler will not count. We're not going to talk about him in this episode because he should be there. So non-debuted top rookies that we're going to target in 2026.
Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel, doing all that great stuff. We are going to be pumping out content here over the next several months. Welsh and I are going to be together in person next week, doing an in-person podcast and doing, a couple of fun little content things in Arizona. So make sure you guys are subscribed and doing all of that great stuff. Welsh, before we get into the list here, I'm going to throw you a slight curveball just because the topic is rookies. We saw Trey Yesavage have this ridiculous start yesterday, and I know we're talking non-debuted guys, but I can't help myself here. Does that really shoot him up draft boards for you, dynasty rankings? He's still rookie eligible for 2026. That 12 strikeout, 7-inning beauty of a start yesterday, are people going to overreact to that, or is he the real thing in your eyes?
I don't know if it's an overreact. It's actually funny. I out here in the Arizona Fall League, I'm talking to some guys, and there happens to be like one guy who had some major league experience, and it's Nacho Alvarez. And we were talking about the World Series, and we were talking about a couple guys, and he had talked about there's some pitcher out here that had this really like aggressive side like submarine arm angle, and he was talking about how tough it was. And then I'm sitting there with him, and Brandon Winokur is a prospect with the Twins, and the World Series comes up, and I look at Nacho and I go, let me ask you something. Is the submarine tougher, or is a guy like Trey Yesavage, who comes from a complete over the top with that splitter, tougher? And he looked and he thought about it for a second. He went, it's all tough. He's like, I'm not sure that I could pinpoint which one is more difficult. But the reason I'm throwing that out is like, you talk about sometimes these weird arm angles, even a straight over the top can be really deceiving for a hitter. And he's got such an interesting arsenal that was already a part of his, stigma or lore going into, the season. We talked about him on leading off, like, hey, Trey Yesavage is a guy they might bring up at the end of the year. And it ended up being for a playoff run. So kind of tying this all back in is that like, I don't really think there's necessarily an overreaction, because like that was the most dominant rookie performance we've ever seen in the World Series. He's been an absolute stud and just answered every single call in the playoffs. But the rookies at the end of the season, those are the guys that are going to get these big boosts. Nolan McLean's another one of those that I don't think exhausted his prospect eligibility. We're going to go in next year with Trey Yesavage, Nolan McLean, and Bubba Chandler as 3 prospects that are going to be rookie eligible for next year, and all had phenomenal ends to the season. So like, yes, the overreaction is small sample sizes, but if anything, I would say Trey Yesavage has probably met the biggest call because he's been put in the most aggressive situations. Now, if any of them become like top 20 pitching prospects in fantasy, that's probably a little too much because, you're going to look at theoretical like inning limits and stuff like that. But no, I think like we've seen this before. We've seen guys make their debuts in the playoffs, and, we've seen some big success. I don't think we're going to have a big overreaction. I think this is the biggest school. The AFL is kind of like a little tutoring ground before Major League Baseball. Trey Yesavage is having the ultimate class. This is a master's class that he's having, and he's going to be deserved. Really, the only thing is going to be, what's the order next year of the pitching prospects that are still rookies? Is it going to be Yesavage at the top? Bubba Chandler's stuff is the biggest. Nolan McLean might be the nastiest of all of them. So it's just a really good class. I don't think it's too overrated, but he has absolutely skyrocketed his value for 2026.
It was amazing to watch. There's been all the talk of he started in single A and all this stuff. He's making $57,000 this year, folks. $57,000. There's a very good chance if you're listening to this, you're making more money than Trey Yesavage made this year. It's just amazing. I can't help myself with the Blue Jays. But we'll move on. That will be the only.
He got a little bit of a
World
draft
Series
signing bonus, though. Want to point that out. He makes a couple more bucks with what he got from the draft. But to your point,
yeah, no, it's. I'm just giddy. I'm just really giddy thinking about having him wearing our colors, wearing our jerseys for the next 6, 7, hopefully 15 years at this point. But let's get into the meat and potatoes. We are going to be talking about those non-debuted prospects. And we're going to start with Kevin McGonigle, the Tigers shortstop prospect who put together a phenomenal year in the minors across both levels of A-ball and AA. 19 homers, 10 stolen bases, and a .305 average. If there's anything I love in a player profile, it's a guy who walks more than he strikes out. 15% walk rate, 11% strikeout rate, a 182 WRC plus. He was phenomenal. Is there any chance that we see Kevin McGonigle start the year with the Tigers? Now, there's the whole Trey Sweeney conundrum there potentially. What do you think is going to happen here, Welsh?
Yeah, so he's not only like one of the top prospects in baseball. In some places, he's number 1. I've got him at number 2. He's out here in the Arizona Fall League right now. I have seen him extensively. And I think there's a multitude of reasons why things are pointing in the direction that this is probably, of the non-debuted prospects, he is probably set up, have the best probability to be able to crack an opening day roster spot. If not, it be really early. Phenomenal year, as you mentioned, hit a 3.4 line, over 300 average, over 400 OBP. He's got incredible contact skills. He's come out here in the Arizona Fall League. He's hitting, as we're recording this, 360, mid 400 OBP, 600 slug, really taking fire. He's walking a bunch, but he's also playing third base. So he's shortstop and third base. And I think that's key because this team wants to see the flexibility that they have in him because they've got holes. Is Javier Baez really going to be the shortstop? I think they have like Colt Keith lined as the third baseman. I think at the end of the day, you're going to have some Kerry Carpenter and Torkelson splitting between who the DH is. Colt can go to first, and then, dealing with McKinstry. McGonigle almost got a call prior to the season call up, and he's had a phenomenal AFL. He's a leader. He's playing multiple positions. I would put his percentages right now of the list we're going to do at about 65%. There's actually one of his teammates who's out here, I think might also potentially kind of, shoot at that. But I think, McGonigle's a star. He's a super, super advanced prospect. I don't know where the power is going to end up being. He's got more of a doubles approach. He can absolutely crush baseballs. It kind of has, there's a little reminder to me of like what Corbin Carroll is. He doesn't have the stolen base acumen. He definitely steals bases, but the doubles, contact, and maybe physicality, he reminds me a lot of Corbin Carroll in that sense. I think he's going to be like a teens to 20 homer guy, a teens to 20 stolen base guy, but he could hit high in the lineup. And I think he's got a high probability to be up with the Tigers early. So this is a rookie that you're going to want to invest in drafts. And the bigger question is going to be, where does he end up going? The roster already kind of speaks to us that he could be up very, very soon. So like if things were to stick where it is, where it's like, he's got to beat out, they move Javier Baez back to the outfield. I would say McGonigle shouldn't be too far out of a top 100 prospect if you want to build on a full season of him. If he is given the job very early on in drafts, I think McGonigle is going to be a guy that pushes inside the top 100 simply because this is a potential 5-tool player. So really love Kevin McGonigle. The third base stuff really creates extra flexibility. And to me is saying that he's going to have a shot at opening day. And if not, it's probably going to be within a month or two. So he's going to be worth drafting. And also, he's one of the top prospects in baseball.
Yeah, he just doesn't profile as somebody who's really going to hurt you anywhere. It might not be a massive boon in power like you're talking about, but even if you're getting 20 homers, 10 steals, hitting for a solid average, the Tigers are a decent lineups as well. The last couple of years, they've improved quite a bit.
And to note, 19 homers. He did do that in around like 330 something at bat. So you give him over a full season. He's got 2 homers out here in the AFL. So if you want to stack stuff up, he's probably near 400 at bats with 21 homers. It really does kind of reek of what Corbin Carroll as a hitter is. I don't want to confuse it. I don't want you to think Corbin Carroll is going to be this, or Kevin McGonigle is going to be a 60 stolen base, No, he's gonna be like in the 20s. He's definitely trying to steal bases when he's out there, but he's not aggressive. He actually his ceiling might be like what Carroll was this year. Where Carroll just barely got over 30 hits for a good average. McGonigle might have a better propensity for average, but I think he has that same batting approach. I'd love to see his bat speed numbers like Corbin Carroll. So that's kind of the same realm I think he could live in. And I think he's going to be a 1 to 3 hitter. I think he could lead off. Out here in the fall league, he's done a lot of 2. So I think that's like a prime spot. The Tigers might end up having him and being a number 2-hole hitter. So be on the lookout for that. He's a very special prospect. Looks like one of the best guys out here, but that extra flexibility positionally with the already great offense, it's screaming at us that he's going to be, it's like Nick Kurtz. Nick Kurtz had a huge, big push and he was out here in the fall league. I think these top guys who meet that call, this was the last answer they needed, and Kevin McGonigle's done that. So he's going to be at the tippy top of non-debuted prospects that are going to be worth drafting in 2026.
Let's move on to JJ Wetherholt, the shortstop prospect in the Cardinals system. He had a very solid year across single A, double A, and triple A. 109 games, 17 homers, 23 steals, and he hit over 300 with a 152 WRC+. Welsh, where do you see him landing in this Cardinals hierarchy? Especially because Mason Wynn was kind of disappointing. Is there any chance that Wetherholt could play a different position, or perhaps Wynn could play a different position next year to fit them both in?
Yeah, I don't know if they'd ever move Wynn off of another position just because defensively he's so solid and offensively that's where the struggle is. But Wetherholt definitely could move around. And one of the biggest things that worked well for him is he got up to AAA. So Wetherholt has some similar traits in my mind to Kevin McGonigle, and I hate to do it again, but it's this is the other guy that has Corbin Carroll-ness to me. And I think that to me a little bit is probably those sub 5'11" batters that have really, really good bat speed. And that's what Wetherholt has. He's like a offensive whiz, batting average across 3 levels since 2024. He's never hit under 295, which has been really great. He had 17 homers this year in just under 500 plate appearances, 23 stolen bases. You love all that type of stuff. Probably closer to a 15-25 guy in the majors. Maybe it can go up or down. There's solid bat speed, good offensive profile. And again, like McGonigle, the batting average for him being a high-end 1 or 2 hitter in a lineup really speaks to it. What you love even more, though, is this is a guy that doesn't strike out. McGonigle's shown some strikeout stuff out here in the Arizona Fall League, under 15% for JJ Wetherholt at every single stop in the minors. He has had a double-digit walk rate. He's never struck out more than 15%, while never hitting under 295. Those are phenomenal numbers. He's flown up the system, and we get some AAA data, or some StatCast data because he got to AAA. 80% contact rate at AAA, we love, but even more, 48% hard hit rate for this guy, attached to a 91.5 average exit velocity, and he gets the ball in the air. It was around a 12-degree launch angle. There is a really interesting profile in him for a guy that is already at AAA, that had already amassed all the plate appearances. And what were the Cardinals missing all season long? Offense. He is going to get an opportunity. Now, I have him slightly lower than McGonigle, just simply because I think there's more options for the Cardinals to play around with, but I think it's a 50-50 chance. Very early on here, it's tough to say exactly where we should be taking a lot of these guys. I say McGonigle, even now, should probably be stared at as a player that's going a little bit outside the top 100. And then, if they're he's got the job, then I think he'll move up into the 70s. Wetherholt is probably, I have not looked at a single bit of ADP data from whatever amount of drafts that have even happened at this point, which is probably null and void. I would think JJ Wetherholt, you got to pay attention to outside the top 150 because of the offensive profile with the Cardinals if he does come up early. So he's a guy that I'm going to be targeting, like McGonigle. There's stolen base, there's power. It's 5 tools. Very, very much into JJ Wetherholt.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ADP, I know the NFBC where I play a lot, they will flip over after the World Series, and there's been a couple of drafts. So by the time we are recording together next week, I'm sure on that episode we'll sprinkle in some of the new ADP data. We love it. As soon as there's ADP data, I usually spend a couple hours going through it because that's why we do this. Let's talk about somebody from down under, Travis Bazzana, who was the number one pick a couple years ago in the draft. I don't know necessarily if Cleveland would make that pick again, just seeing some of the other guys that have gone after him. But still, Bazzana has put together a fairly solid minor league track record over the last couple of years, mostly in 2025. He had a 136 WRC plus, 9 homers, 12 steals, albeit with kind of a low batting average at 245, but nearly a 400 on base percentage here, Chris. What do you think they are going to do with Bazzana? I'd like to see him on the opening day roster. Not sure it's going to happen. What say you?
Yeah, so this is my number 3 here. I am higher on Travis Bazzana than, quite a few people, I think, in the industry. But we thought we were going to see him in the Arizona Fall League as the finishing school. That's the term that they use, a finishing school for him. But I think they were comfortable with it. He did have a lot of injuries. I got him out here in the Arizona Complex League, but he was able to get back up and ended up having 26 games at AAA where, to your point, a reason why he might not make the opening day roster and why I put him also at 50-50 like JJ Wetherholt is that, there were some struggles. His K percentage is probably where they didn't want it to be. His batting average didn't shine, but he's a high on base guy. He had a 24% walk rate in 26 games at AAA. It's ridiculous. He has got an extreme pull heavy approach. So of all the 3 guys here that we've talked about so far, and we have like all these middle infielders, these kind of smaller middle infielder guys, Bazzana to me has the most potential power impact, even though if you look at the numbers, he's got the least amount of homers of all of these guys. But I'm talking an extreme pull heavy approach for a guy that he struggles a little bit with. This is something I don't love. Edouard Julien did this. I hate when these guys, and I hope he gets out of this, where they become super passive to start at bats, and then they become super aggressive on. So it's like, the bats on the shoulder. They're not, Kevin Biggio used to do it. Edouard Julien used to do it. They would just like let pitches come in, be passive. And then all of a sudden it's a 3-2 count and they're just hardcore swinging. It doesn't work. Bazzana's not quite like that because he is more aggressive in counts, but he has a true understanding of the zone. I think injuries took a lot from the season, but it is loud tools. This guy of these 3 players is going to have the biggest EV numbers. He definitely gets the ball in the air. And we've mentioned this for the last 2 years on this channel. The right field in Cleveland has become a really good homer spot for left-handed hitters because there's like wind tunnel that's going on. So like he's going to thrive in being able to get the ball in the air. The batting average is a big key, but he would be a phenomenal player for them to get up at the top of the order right now because of his ability to walk. If they feel that he has met these check marks that they wanted. And I think they do, and that he has for them, because he didn't go to the Arizona Fall League. I think that would have been something they're like, hey, you missed time. We want you to work on this and this. Nope. Gave him a break. He's going out. And I think it's going to be for an opportunity to get up and play in the majors very, very early on. 50-50 chance to make the opening day roster. I think the power potential is the best. He is an OBP push of the 3 guys we've talked about. I think he's even more valuable in OBP because he's going to be over 400. And if the batting average starts to click like it did in college, where again, it was just big pull air numbers, big hard hit. I mean, of the 3, it's not even close. He's going to be the biggest power impact guy. So I'm a big Travis Bazzana guy. I like him a little bit more than the rest of the industry. That's why I've got him here as number 3 of players that we do need to look at for the 2026 season for these rookies.
So even though you are a little bit higher on consensus than him, do you think that the Guardians would make a different selection if they could go back in time? Would they go for a Nick Kurtz, a Chase Burns, Cam Smith, Trey Yesavage? Do you think they're happy with that pick a year and a half later?
Yeah, I have to go back and look. I don't remember when, but what was Bazzana the number 1 overall? I'm completely
number 1. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just completely blanked on that. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm looking at it right now. 2024. Of course, Nick Kurtz, I don't think is even a question. I mean, that team continuously kind of struggles with like you wanting big power first baseman that they just haven't quite locked into. Maybe they're happy with Manzardo right now. No doubt. Probably with Chase Burns, I would think as well. Probably Trey Yesavage. I think there's always a revisionist history. But the thing that you got with Travis Bazzana, outside if they got any deal, is you got like a really advanced offensive profile that he's just been hammered by injuries, since he started, and it's really kind of taken him back. So yeah, I think they would make some changes, but I think there's still a big offensive profile. The thing they need from him, though, is they need for him to be a higher batting average guy. Like that's what they want. They can't have a bunch of Kyle Manzardos. They can't have a bunch of 240 hitters surrounded with Jose Ramirez. Like Ramirez wants help. I think that could be another reason that Bazzana could be up early, because it's like they want impact and they want it now. And I think they feel confident they've got it out of him. But yeah, Nick Kurtz, I think anybody would pick Nick Kurtz over Bazzana right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Guys, before we move on, I want to remind you about our new presenting sponsor of the show, and that is Hard Rock Bet. If you haven't placed your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. We got the World Series, Week 9 in the NFL, Week 10 college football, NHL, NBA. It's the sports equinox right now, at least until the weekend concludes. So download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit today. Guys, we're going to continue on with the shortstop theme here, moving to Philadelphia with Aidan Miller. Put together another really nice year. It's kind of been a common theme. Everybody had a very nice year, but particularly in the speed category, he has a 55 speed rating as a prospect, 55 out of 55 speed at 59 stolen bases in 116 games to go along with 14 homers. He hit 264, a solid 16% walk rate. What's the future here for Aidan Miller? Is he going to usurp Trey Turner and maybe they move him somewhere else? Any insight on what the plan is in Philadelphia, Welsh?
Well, I wish I had really great insight, but the thing that I think creates the path, if you want to talk about my number 4 rookie here to look at, is Alec Bohm. This team has been trying to get Alec Bohm off the roster, and I believe he's a free agent after this season. So he's got 1 year left under him. So does that mean that the team just kind of rolls with it, runs it back, and is comfortable with it? Or do they finally bite, get him off the roster because there's 1 year left and it opens up a spot, whatever that spot looks like? Could it be Bryson Stott moving it over, or could it be Aidan Miller? Aidan Miller was a guy that many thought was going to be a third baseman into the future. He's kind of continued at shortstop, which has been good, but he was scheduled to come out here in the Arizona Fall League. He did not because of a wrist issue. He didn't come out. But a thing I want to point out, which we could have seen, and I didn't get to find out, obviously, that same team had Sebastian Walcott, who was there to play shortstop and third base. Would we have seen Aidan Miller playing a lot of third base out here in the Fall League? That, I think, would have been a big tell of like, oh, this is the future plan. Like, they know he can play third. He can move over to second, but maybe he could be the guy that's going to be the third baseman. So is there a path? It's not going to be through Trey Turner. It's probably not through Stott. Stott's still got 2 more years on the contract, but it definitely could be through Alec Bohm. And we'll have to see how aggressive they want to be. We ended up getting a relatively full season. We didn't get a bunch of AAA stuff from Aidan Miller. He only had 8 games, but he finished the season with a 264 average, which is solid, a 392 OBP, 14 homers, we did 27 doubles. So we topped well over 40 extra base hits, which you love to see. And then an insane 59 stolen bases, which, by the way, those are paired with 15 bases caught, where he was caught stealing. So he had over 70 attempted base steals there. That's something that the Phillies could end up looking at and just going, listen, this guy could be an impact at all sides. Defensively, he's a shortstop playing third, and we like him there. He can hit for power. He's getting on base, even if the batting average is slipping, and he can be super aggressive, something we never really saw out of like a guy like Stott. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I would put Aidan, since the guys we've been talking about are not only, we have not ordered this in percentages, by the way. I know we have an ascending or descending order of percentages of how I think they're going to make the rosters. It's actually more about the high-end prospect impact that they are as well. I'd put him under 50%. I'd put him around 40%. But the thing to monitor to me is if Alec Bohm gets moved, Aidan Miller is a guy that does have an opportunity to break camp. If he doesn't break camp, I don't think it's going to be more than 20 or 30 games in AAA, as long as he doesn't struggle, that this Phillies team is going to look and just say, hey, he can help us on all facets of the field. If there's an injury, I think he would be the top guy up. The big key is he got to AAA. He's a menace on the base path, which many didn't feel. And he's got a really impressive offensive skill set that only just looks dramatically better with those stolen bases. So I really like Aidan Miller, but I will say the tiers are changing. I actually think Wetherholt and McGonigle, that's kind of a tier. Then there is this little tier of Travis Bazzana. And then now we're opening up a little bit to speculative market of players that are going to, make it to the majors early on. But Aidan Miller is going to be a rookie. If not for opening day, you're going to want to pay attention to if the power and speed continue to go. It's very valuable, clearly.
Really phenomenal stuff. It almost kind of reminds me of, maybe this is not a great comp, but like an Ellie De La Cruz, but with less swing and miss, less power maybe, but just like the 20-60 type of potential stat line. I don't know, giving me kind of some Ellie De La Cruz thoughts, although it's probably not a perfect comp there.
It might be like, and I very carefully say this because I don't think he has the same bat to ball, like full on offensive hit tool, but it's kind of like a Bobby Witt. Like Bobby Witt can steal a few more bases than he's hitting for power. I just like the problem is Miller's probably never going to crack the top 3 or 4 in an order. That's going to take him away. If he struggles with batting average, you're just really not that. But like instead of Ellie, you might look at more like what Bobby Witt Jr. has done. And if all things, again, this is a 21-year-old kid, so this is a super young kid. If all things work out, like he definitely is going to have a lot of offensive high upside.
All right, let's move on to Colt Emerson here. One more shortstop, this one in the Mariners system. Had a very solid 2025, 130 games with exactly 600 plate appearances, 16 homers, 14 steals, and he hit 285 with a 130 WRC+. Just turned 20 years old a couple of months ago as well. Welsh, where do you think Colt Emerson lies here in the Mariners' future? Is he a J.P. Crawford replacement? Is he going to go somewhere else on the infield? What do you think is going to happen here?
I think Colt Emerson is going to be the starting second baseman. Now, the only thing that's going to take that away is if this team decides to go out of house. I know they've got Cole Young. That's someone they could take a look at, but I think it's going to be Colt Emerson. Emerson ended up getting a spot on the taxi squad while they were running through the playoffs. And that was like, he could have been one of those guys like Chase DeLauder. He was going to get his major league debut in the playoffs. It didn't end up happening. But, the reason that he was there is he's a solid defensive infielder. The offensive profile, again, this is one of those guys. He hit 285 this past year, 380 OBP, 14 stolen bases, 16 homers. I think he has the lowest offensive fantasy profile of the players that we've talked about, but he has probably one of the higher floors. He's going to hit for average. I think he's a phenomenal high end in the order hitter. He might start on the team hitting, maybe 7 or 8 or something, but could he become the number 2 guy? 100% with that OBP and batting average. I just don't know at the end of the day, is he going to be more than a 15-15 guy? I think it's a possibility. The offensive profile in Seattle, it's a little bit discouraging at the end of the day, but he was a big doubles hitter. He had 28 doubles. I think this team, I'm giving him a 55% chance. So we're better than 50-50 here, jumping up. He's a little bit lower on this list because like the impact of guys like Bazzana, I think is just a better bet. But I do think it's a better bet for him to make the roster because there is a clear open spot at second base. And I would imagine camp is going to be Cole Young versus Colt Emerson, who can take this down unless they go make some big impactful moves. So I think the most enticing part of this is, and I think in points leagues, like the lower strikeout stuff and his ability to get on base is going to make him high OBP leagues as well. I think this is a higher probability. This is kind of like the prospect thing, proximity. He has a high probability of making a roster versus maybe even a Bazzana, but I'll take Bazzana's offensive profile over him. But we're going to give an over 50% chance that Colt Emerson makes the opening day roster.
Let's transition into a pitcher and somebody that feels like he's been kicking around for a very, very long time. He's still just 22 years old. That's Andrew Painter, because he had to go under the knife. He missed a couple of seasons due to Tommy John. And I got to be honest with you, Welsh, I don't know that he's the same guy since he's come back. Now, will he eventually regain the form that we saw in 2022? It's possible. He's still very young. But where do you think the upside is with Andrew Painter? Is he still the number 1 prospect? Potentially. I know he's not listed as the number 1 guy on a lot of sites anymore, but could he get back there?
So Painter's pretty interesting. Could he get back there? Like, definitely. He's still young. He feels like he's like 25 years old because he missed all that time, but he's still just like 22. He pitched a decent, they really babied him last year. Like they didn't pitch him in like the first half of the minor league season, or they really made it low, but he ended up getting 118 innings under his belt. Unfortunately, it's kind of an inflated ERA. It was 5.26, but it was around a low 4s xFIP, so a full run lower. And then we did get some data from at least what his stuff was looking like in AAA, where he had around 13% swinging strike rate, which wasn't like the best in the world, but we saw his fastball pushing almost 97. He was throwing his cutter still, which might be one of his best pitches, which I hope to see more of. He hits that at 90. He's got a slider at 97. He had a 5-pitch arsenal, 5 pitches that he had a double-digit percentage usage. Now, maybe he kind of hones that in a little bit. I got to see him in the fall league about a year ago from right now, and he looked relatively unhittable. I think the hitability and how much he got hit up this year kind of backtracked him a bit, but there's going to be some opportunities in like what time Wheeler's going to miss, whatever else they decide to do. Like there's only so much more he's going to be in the minors. He pitched 106 innings at AAA. He's going to vie for a spot. So this is a 65% that he's going to make the opening day roster, because the only thing that's going to hold him back is there's just a glut of great guys there. There's the risk of bullpen. I still believe in the stuff. I think he's going to have a full season under him because he hit that 118 marker. I think he can push to probably 150 in a full season. So maybe they baby him a little bit out. But 3 years ago, when he was a 20-year-old, he was vying for an opening day roster spot with the Phillies. And then he had the surgery and then they babied it. We're beyond babying right now. I'm not too worried about some of what the stuff looked like this year. I think it all got back. He's got great velo. He'll work in the offseason. Just really, really smart guy. And I think he can definitely be in the Phillies rotation, pending that there is availability. But I'm going to put it at a high percentage that Andrew Painter, the problem here is there are so many uniquely good pitchers that made their debut that are prospect eligible. I'm going to take Tong. I'm going to take Bubba. I'm going to take McLean. I'll take Yesavage. I'm going to take those guys over him. But of the non-debuted pitching prospects, there's really not a ton that I think have viability to come up super early on. There's guys that we'll talk about on leading off in the coming year, when it's like May, that we think could come up soon. But of guys that really have an opportunity to come up right around opening day, there's only a couple, and he's at the top of the list.
Yeah, I want to see the strikeouts come back to where they were. The command is the last thing, famously, that you see return after Tommy John surgery. So hopefully next year we do see him kind of regain that form. And I think that, I think I can speak for everybody when I say we don't need to see Taijuan Walker anymore. He's only 33, but I mean, he's just fairly unexceptional. Give Painter that job. Maybe exactly. Wheeler isn't ready for opening day. And the last thing here is that Philly is not exactly a team that has a long timeline. Trey Turner's 32. Bryce Harper, 33. Castellanos, 33. JT Realmuto, if he's even coming back, is like 34. They need to start doing things ASAP to try and get a championship ring with this core group. Who knows with Kyle Schwarber if he's going to come back? Like, this is a team that they kind of need to get things moving. Let's talk Robby Snelling, who did get moved at the deadline. My brain is blanking on the trade exactly. But it was Miami and San Diego.
Luis Arraez. It was a Luis Arraez one where it was. Yeah, it was Robby Snelling, Jacob Marcy, Graham Pauley, and Adam Mazer for Luis Arraez.
Not the podcaster Adam Mazer, the pitcher.
Adam Mazer. Yeah, not Azer. Yeah.
That's an old joke. I apologize for that one. But 136 innings for Snelling in the minors this year, a 9-7 record with a 2.51 ERA, 30% strikeout rate, and a 7% walk rate. Welsh, you think there's a chance that we see him on opening day?
Yeah, Robby Snelling, one of my favorites, personal favorite when he was a Padre. I got to spend a decent amount of time with him. I think there's a lot of people that were calling for him to come up this past season. He had 2 years ago, one of the best minor league seasons. Then in the midst of the trade, everything completely fell apart and he looked lost. In 2024, he ended up having an over 5 ERA. XFIP was around 3.8, kind of similar to Andrew Painter. And then this past year, everything came back. 2.51 ERA and almost 11 K per 9. His FIP numbers were right at 2.7. And what was one of the biggest denominators here was velo returns. He was throwing 92.9 on his fastball in 2024. 94.7 on average. So almost 2 miles an hour, essentially added back on the fastball. His slider, he kind of, he did uptick it. It was the sinker. His sinker, he threw a little bit harder, but he stopped throwing as much. His slider, he threw a little bit less, but it was 2 miles an hour harder. So he got all of his velo back. Estella got his groove back. Snelling got his groove back, and he got the whole thing going. He's going to be only 22 years old, but everything he did this past year, like Andrew Painter, was essentially at AAA, or at least the second half of it, over 60 innings at AAA, where, by the way, I didn't even mention this. In his AA starts, he had a 3.61 ERA last year. In his AAA, 1.27. His K per nine went up. His walks per nine went down. His ERA got better. He stranded more batters. He was absolutely dominant. And Marlins have had a pretty good track record of like what they've done in pitching development. And all we heard this during season was like Edward Cabrera could get traded. Sandy Alcantara could get traded. Well, guess what? Once they make the move, Robby Snelling is going to be a beneficiary. I have no doubt about that. Unless they go and trade for three, they trade Sandy Alcantara for like 3 major league ready pitching guys. Robby Snelling is going to be up. He was an elite K guy. He lowered the walks. He's got a great arsenal. And just to revamp it again, it's heavy fastball, relatively heavy slider, and he's got a nice cutter. He did the cutter changeup thing. So like it's a good 4-pitch arsenal with big strikeouts. Robby Snelling, I think, has a very good opportunity. I put Painter in like the 60 to 65% range. I think that Robby Snelling is in the 50 to a little bit higher. And as pitchers get traded, if you see Cabrera and Alcantara go, I think Robby Snelling is going to be a guy. I think he's the sneakiest one of this entire list because there's a lot of big name prospects we've talked about. Snelling is the start of a guy that doesn't crack a lot of top 30s or novice people into the prospect game. They just don't really know. Well, guess what? You're in some NFBC draft and you're in the 300s or something like that, grab Robby Snelling because he's going to get, regardless, he's going to get significant innings this year, but he could break camp. So I'm drafting Robby Snelling in deeper leagues. If it's a standard 10-man league, I don't know. You might need to wait a little bit, but I do think he's going to get some run. And based on what the Marlins have been doing, guys, I feel really relatively encouraged about what he's going to be able to do in the majors. Yeah,
despite his age, he does seem pretty major league ready. If you look at the plate discipline data from AAA, was very, very good. Very solid stuff. 32% O swing I like to see. Only a 77% zone contact rate. That's the average major league contact rate is like 7 or 8 points ahead of that in the zone. So he's doing really great work in AAA so far. Let's talk about a couple more guys quickly here. Deep guys who we could like heading into next season. Spencer Jones, Max Anderson, and Quinn Mathews. Spencer Jones, probably the most noteworthy name here, being the Yankee prospect that they believe is the next Aaron Judge. I think he's closer to being the next Bobby Dahlbeck. What do you think about these guys as a whole, Welsh?
Yeah, so these are 3 more players and having a nice, clean 10 prospects that we're talking about. These are 3 other players that are, higher-ish, or at least if I go down my prospect list, that I think are all viable options. Spencer Jones is the most obvious. Here's where I'll throw the percentages. If he's a Yankee, it's probably 30% that he makes opening day roster, but it's over 50% if he gets traded. There's no more reason, unless he might be a true quad A player, by the way, but there's nothing more gained from him being in the minors anymore. Like he did it. He got he started using the torpedo bat. Technically, in all of his badness, the dude hit over 270. Like the way we talk, anybody, sometimes me, I'm a little bit of an apologist for Spencer Jones. The way people talk about Spencer Jones, you would think he hit 170. No, he hit 270 this year, but it's one of the nastiest chase strikeout games that are out there. That's just who he is, but it's immensely loud tools. Ridiculous power speed numbers. It's like it's Ellie De La Cruz. You compared Ellie with Aidan Miller. No. Spencer Jones is more like Ellie De La Cruz because it's hit hard, it's in the air, it's loud. The problem is Ellie started to show his ability to cut down on strikeouts. Spencer Jones has not done that. The biggest thing he did this past year was go to a lot of these hitting clinics, learn where he's hitting the ball, and that's why they optimize using the torpedo bat based on his contact spot. They're like, the torpedo bat is literally where you're doing it. Well, guess what? It did create a better situation where he hit for better average, but he's still swinging and missing. So could that be the thing he works on this year? That'd be awesome. But he's still making do. Problem is are you going to be able to do this at the major league level? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work. I'm not even sure he's viable to draft at this point. I'd love to see some big changes, but the stats are loud, and his ability as someone to look at, you should pay attention to regardless of like what you feel about it, because if that strikeout rate does go under 30%, he could walk into a 30-30 season like without question. Also, if he did play with the Yankees, that ballpark is phenomenal. So I do think you just need to pay attention to him because he will be up early. I'd be surprised if he's not up by June, unless he's just, he's going to be what is it? The next Mike Hessman, wasn't it? Like 800 minor league appearances, unless he's going to be that. The other two guys that you mentioned as deeper options, I want to throw Max Anderson out at you guys. I think he could potentially pour cold water on Kevin McGonigle because he is out here with the Tigers. He's working at not only second, but third base. And I'm going to tell you this. I think Max Anderson has the best hit tool in the Arizona Fall League. That includes Kevin McGonigle. I think he is the best bat. He has a tremendous ability for the zone. He's hitting for power. He's tied for second in the power numbers out here. I love everything he does. And I kind of wouldn't be shocked if they just decided to go to Max and to Kevin McGonigle to start. But I think he will be up early rather than later, especially if they kind of clean house a little bit with some of that roster. They wanted guys that hit for average. Well, guess what? Put Max Anderson and Kevin McGonigle in there and get off all these guys that hit 220. That's the way to do it. So I think he has a possibility. And then one last pitcher, Quinn Mathews with the Cardinals, is someone we thought we would see last year. I'm going to put it around 50-50 because the Cardinals might clean some house. The reason it's not guaranteed is he really fell apart in the first half. He got it back in the second half. Velo came back. There was consistency. Like he was able to reestablish, but he was a tale of two seasons. It's another guy that's just a little too old to be in the minor leagues. They got to do something with him. So I think we're going to see him pitch some innings next year. It's just, will they be with the Cardinals? Will they be with another team? Will he be bouncing around? I'm not 100%, but in a world of these last three of guys like, hey, if I'm in deeper leagues, who are guys that I could take some shots on? Spencer Jones, loudest tools. Max Anderson might be the biggest, sneakiest guy for this coming season. And Quinn Mathews is a non-debuted pitching prospect that could get some early innings.
Could we see them by the 2026 All-Star break? Our last segment today, 5 players that could potentially be up and make a big impact. Hunter Griffin, Welsh, any chance we see him up by the All-Star break making an impact in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, there's people screaming that are like, hey guys, you talked about 10 prospects that are going to be up. What about some of the biggest prospects in baseball that we didn't? Connor Griffin, the number one prospect in the land. Could we see him? I actually do think we could see him. I think the probability is lower, but he did get to Double-A. He's a unicorn. The one thing is they didn't send him to the Fall League, which I kind of thought might be the finishing side of this. I think he restarts at Double-A, but if he kills Double-A, you get him to Triple-A, there's going to be a push for the Pirates because they don't do anything with this team. Maybe you have Jared Jones back. You've got Paul Skeens. Get them some help. Connor Griffin continues like he did last year. I do think he could be a mid-season prospect that could make impact. So we don't want to draft him in leagues early on, but we're going to want to put a little marker on him when we get to mid-season. So he's a mid prospect I do think we'll see.
Yeah, Pittsburgh does not have a good track record, at least recently, with bringing these guys up early enough for them to make a difference. Sebastian Walcott, we'll move on to him. I have seen on various lists at times he's been the number one prospect in fantasy lists. 13 homers, 32 steals, and a 255 last year. Welsh, do we see him with Texas by the All-Star break?
I'm going to say no, we don't see him. Possibilities are there because Corey Seager is perpetually hurt, but also Sebastian Walcott is. Sebastian Walcott played one game in the Fall League, got hurt, and he's out. There's also some volatility in like his swing and the strikeouts. He has been playing third base, which creates some extra, like ability across the field. I just kind of think Texas is still in this big win now process. I'm going to say that he's going to be more slow rolled. So I'm going to go with no, he is not up by the All-Star break.
Okay. I think, yeah.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
He's just so young. I think that's the thing, right? Like isn't he still 19 or has he turned 20? Like he's just so young.
Yeah, he's super young.
For them to really, really push it. Max Clark, somebody who's a very entertaining follow on Twitter, by the way, had a very solid year, 14 homers, 19 steals, and a 271 average in the Tigers system. Welsh, do we see him by the All-Star break?
Yeah, so I'm going to say yes. And that means I've created, the Diamondbacks had a movement. It was called the Baby Backs, where they had all these guys. Can they really afford to have all of these rookies, especially as a team that just made the playoffs with Tarek Skubal? I don't know. But I think Max Clark is way too good. I do think he'll probably start at Double-A. He dominates there. I would imagine by May, he's up at Triple-A. So by the All-Star break, can they really keep him down? Can they have Max Anderson, Max Clark, and Kevin McGonigle up? I don't know if they can afford it, but I think they'll do it. So I'm going to say yes on Max Clark.
Leo DeVries. Now, this is an interesting one. The trade piece that came over for Mason Miller, the main one, he actually improved, his numbers did, once they came to Oakland, and he actually jumped up from high A to Double-A. 119 WRC plus up to 144. The problem is he's born in 2006. He's only 19. Any chance we see him next year?
I might surprise people. I'm going to say yes. The A's have definitely not shied away from being aggressive sometimes in their minor league spots. He'll play second base because Jacob Wilson has a stranglehold on the shortstop gig. I don't think that's going to change. But I think like the way he's progressed, and he went out and played in Lidom this winter, I think there's a high probability. I mean, listen, when he doesn't, I'm not going to be shocked whatsoever if Leo DeVries doesn't come up. He's not someone I'm targeting unless it is a crazy big like NFBC, and you're trying to get, some production on the second half. But I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say, and that might be surprising that I say Walcott no and DeVries yes. I just think the A's are just not afraid to kind of press some of that. It's high batting average. I'm going to say yes, Leo DeVries.
One more name, Cade Anderson. Did the Mariners need another stud pitching prospect? Well, they got one anyway. 19 games started last year at LSU, 119 innings, 3.18 ERA, and a 37% strikeout rate with only a 7% walk rate. Welsh, will they be aggressive with Cade Anderson?
Yeah, and I think this is a fun one. Tyler Brimner, we could have put as this as well because he's an Angels pitcher. He had he never got to pitch, and I think there was like a little injury thing that popped up, so that's why I took him off the list. But a lot of people, myself included, have said like Cade is a guy that you could see theoretically break camp with this. Like, we wouldn't be shocked if this was like a Crochet situation where it's like they just don't spend time in the minors. I'm going to say that's not going to happen, and we will not see him, but it might not be far back. And don't be shocked if he ends up being like this year's Chase Burns, where it takes half of a season. He's such an advanced pitcher, College World Series guy. Like, it takes him a little bit of a run through, especially if they have a pitching injury or they decide to move off of one of their great pieces of their rotation. But if they run it back with their rotation, I'm going to say no on Cade Anderson. I think a lot of people are going to be projecting that he's going to be the first pitcher that's going to come up. I really wouldn't doubt that it's going to happen. But if we use the All-Star break as a marker, I'll say no on Cade Anderson.
Oh, man, people are going to dream about him pitching at Safeco. T-Mobile. I caught myself before. I completed that one. I always do that with the old ballparks. I'm not good when they change the name. I always call them. It's still Miller Park to me in Milwaukee.
I'm horrific with ballpark names, yeah.
But, guys, we'll wrap it up there. 10 prospects plus 5 additional ones that could be up by mid-season. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing, commenting, doing all that stuff because we are going to be ramping things up here over the next couple of weeks and months. Welshie and I will be together in person, sitting beside each other, recording a podcast next week, which will be in your feeds, I think, a couple days after that. But make sure you guys are subscribing, doing all of that stuff. For Chris Welsh, I am Joe Orrico. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Pros Baseball Podcast.